So this person wrote, I'm 40 with nothing saved and zero retirement. Is it too late for me? I turned 40 last week and it finally hit me. I have nothing saved and no retirement plan. I've always lived paycheck to paycheck and just haven't had the chance to save. Until I started my most recent job, I've always worked at gas stations or front desks, making nothing more than minimum wage. I got lucky finding my current job at a small business. I started here earning $16 an hour and have worked my way up to $25 an hour. This is the most I've ever made. I'm single, have no children, and don't own a house. I bring home around $3,000 a month after taxes and don't have any major debts. My expenses add up to about $1,600 a month. This is the first time I've ever really looked at my finances and I don't know where to start. I thought about saving for a down payment on a home instead of renting and living with a roommate, but now I'm thinking I should focus on saving for retirement. I've read a lot about 401ks, Roths, and investments, but to be honest, I really don't understand any of it. I don't have anyone, I'm really on my own. Last night, after a lot of worrying and some crying, I opened 2 new savings accounts, one for retirement and one for an emergency fund. Where do I go from here?
I love this person for asking this question and, being brave enough to even open those accounts and to ask the questions about this, because too many people wait and then, they do think it's too late. But this person's 40 years old. I think it's important that it's not too late, first off, but that you need to start now, right? You can't put this off anymore. For this person, I don't think I would prioritize saving for a home. Being a homeowner has quickly made me realize that it really impacts your bank account. So I think the priority at this point for this individual should be retirement. Mm-hmm. So based on what they've said here, they have an extra $1,400 a month left over after their expenses are paid, which is awesome. My first question back to them would be, do you have any type of savings? Do you have an emergency fund at all? That's the first thing I would tackle before I jump into the investment piece. So for this person, between 3 to 6 months of expenses, so that's anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000 based on their situation. This person has they're not living paycheck to paycheck anymore, which is great, because if this person said I am spending $2,900 of my $3,000 paycheck, we'd be in a different situation here, and this might my answer might be different, but. This person has a really good opportunity here to move their needle forward with the extra income that they have. So I put $1,000 a month into an investment calculator. So if this person starts today at 40 years old and invests that extra $1,000 per month, and again, their income's going to probably go up, so maybe it increases or whatever, but if they only can invest $1,000 a month for the next 25 years until they're 65 years old, and I put in an 8% average rate of return, which is pretty conservative, they would have $951,000 in an investment account. That is way better than having nothing. Yeah. And I'm sure that number would shock this person, to know that they could have almost $1 million if they just start today. So maybe they feel like it's late, but that's a significant amount of money to consider that you have nothing right now,
Yeah. And they also don't need to change any of their expenses. How they're living right now, they could do this. They just have to start making the right moves. But I completely agree. Buying a home is probably not the focus right now. If you have zero retirement, and it's certainly not too late, but another 5 years could cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars. And then at that point, things are starting to get too late the longer you wait. So I'm really glad you brought up the emergency fund. That's definitely first step. If you're starting from scratch, emergency fund before you focus on investing or paying off debt or whatever it is, save up some money for it. But not having any major debts and having leftover money after your income, that's a huge plus. This person did mention that they opened 2 savings accounts, one for the emergency fund, think that's great, and one to start saving for retirement, which I would probably advise against, because at most banks, even if you're in a high yield savings account, saving for your retirement in a savings account, you're really not going to make any progress, especially when you look over 20, 25 years. That money is not going to be growing fast enough to where you can actually start making meaningful progress. So with this person, number one, check, does your company offer a 401k? Do they offer a match? I think that would be super ideal to take advantage of. If they don't, I would start with just a Roth IRA, something super simple. Open that up. According to the numbers you gave us, it sounds like you would have more than enough money per year to max that thing out, $7,000 a year this year. After you've maxed out your Roth IRA, go into that 401k. Even if there's no match, that's still a better tax advantaged account. And if you don't have a 401k, then just throw that money into a taxable brokerage account, something to where, yes, when you pull it out, you're going to have to pay taxes on it, but your money's at least growing faster with the stock market with compound interest. Now, I could imagine that just the way that this person phrased the question, like they're probably still pretty confused on investing. I mean, number one, before you start investing, like my golden rule is never invest in something that you don't understand. And like to know if you understand it, like can you explain it to either a 5-year-old or like your 75-year-old grandma? If you can, like you're probably on the right track. But in terms of just like general things, like how to get started with investing, like start to look into what are index funds, what's the S&P 500, like that's probably going to be for most people somewhere like a really good starting point, or even like a total stock market index fund. Not investment advice. Like you should definitely speak with a professional, figure out what's the right path for you. But I think that's a really good starting point with your research.
Yeah, definitely. Now, what do you think about, I thought about this too for this question. What about the housing situation for this person? You know, do they ever buy a house? You know, do they continue to rent? Or, I mean, my initial thought was get your investment under control. And then maybe your income starts to go up from here. I feel like that happens sometimes. And this person's only 40, so I would assume their income's going to go up. Maybe then they start putting some money aside for like a down payment on a home or something, and then prioritize it. But what are your thoughts on like a home for some? Because this is what they mentioned, so we should, you know, address something about the house. No,
absolutely. And I think, you know, getting into retirement age, I think that's when it becomes really risky that you don't own a home, because your largest monthly expense, your housing, is going to continue to grow year after year. And in those retirement ages, you really want to make sure that your expenses are as fixed as possible, right? Like groceries and gas, that's all going to go up, but your housing is going to be the largest expense. So, you know, I do think focusing on the retirement saving and investing, number one priority, but maybe after a few years, after you've started to make some meaningful progress, and maybe hopefully after, like you said, Lauren, they've started to get an increase in income. Like if you went from $16 to $25 an hour, like you're probably doing good work. Like maybe there is some trajectory there at the company that you could start to make your way up the ladder. You can start finding more opportunities to add more value, hopefully earn more income, or maybe you take what you've learned there, move to a better job that's paying you more. I do think in a few years, it's going to be the right place to start thinking about how do you save up to buy a home? Because again, you don't want to get to retirement age with having such a large part of your monthly expenses be variable, right? Like you want that to be fixed. And at least if you own a home, whether it's a home that you love or not, whatever, at least that is going to be fixed in your monthly expenses. What do you think? Is that a good timeline for them?
Yeah, I think so. And I love that this person comes, into this question with little hope, is it too late for me? And we've just mapped out like that they can own a home and have like $1 million in their investments by the time they get to like 65. So I love it. Right.
Like I feel like the biggest part here is like, yeah, they don't make like an amazing income, like $25 an hour, $3,000 after taxes per month, nothing crazy. But if you can, it's less about how much you're making and more about how much you're able to keep. And if you're only spending like this person's only spending close to 50, 60% of their income, like if they can save that 40%, they're going to be way more ahead than someone earning $100K a year who spends, $95,000 a year, right? So it's all about the increasing the difference between how much you earn and how much you spend. And I think this person is doing a really good job at that.
Yeah, absolutely. The information, opinions, and recommendations provided on this podcast are for entertainment purposes only and do not constitute professional financial advice. Any financial decisions you make based on the content of this podcast are your responsibility. We strongly recommend consulting with a licensed financial advisor or other qualified professional before making any significant financial decisions. By listening to this podcast, you acknowledge that we are not liable for any financial outcomes.